and teaches us every day how to be your people and live for you in this world. Thank you for the opportunity to be part of a community here at Lakeview. The ability to love people and to get to know them. Prompt us, Lord, to look around, to notice the seats that are empty where people might usually sit, to pay attention to the ones who are missing, and ask, how can I reach out to them and let them know I'm thinking of them? Teach us how to be one people, one community. Teach us how to support and love each other in ways that aren't always comfortable, but are always rewarding. We thank you for the joy of doing outreach, of being present in a community that has need of you, that has people who are lonely and unconnected. May they find their way to us. We claim full pews, and we know that you already know what people you would have respond to the call and the invitation to Lakeview. Let us be ready for them, and let us offer them up in prayer right now. Show us how to find them so that we can reach them for you with the message of your love. We think, Lord, of Hazel and her entire family with the loss of her son, Brent. It's been an awful, terrible journey of illness for him. And we just claim your power and presence with the entire family, a sense of your love and care with Hazel, and the prompting in our own lives how to be of good support to her and love her through this time of grieving. This reminds us that Brent isn't the only loss, that we've had many losses in this congregation over the past year or so. Help us remember to reach out to those who have had to say goodbye to their loved ones. Help us reach out to those we know who are sick or hurting. Help us to reach out to those who we don't know what's going on, but we haven't seen them in a while. Help us be your hands and feet, even if it's just picking up the phone and saying, hey, I've missed you, how's it going? Prompt us, nudge us, push us, draw us together. We think also of Colleen's brother-in-law who is ill and healing, we hope, and be with Colleen and her husband as they decide whether to go or stay. Just wrap your arms around that entire family as well. Along with the prayers that we've stated, there are the prayers that are tucked away in our heart, prayers of longing, prayers of hope, prayers of desperation, prayers of gratitude. We take a moment in silence to remember the prayers that are tucked away in our hearts. And so, beloved, we offer up the prayers that have been spoken, the prayers that are silent, and the ones that we don't maybe even know we're praying. We offer them to you because the Spirit is before you, speaking in words and sighs, those things that we can't voice. And we trust your presence in all of those situations. We offer our prayers to you in the name of Jesus Christ, who taught us when we pray to say, Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Our song is Never Ending Joy, and even though it says we're going to remain seated for it, it's kind of a stand up and sing song. So we're going to sing Never Ending Joy. Please rise.
Never-ending joy, never-ending joy, never-ending joy. Never-ending joy, never-ending joy, never-ending joy. God of every tribe, every language, God of every river and sea,
Good morning. Deuteronomy 14 to verses 22 to 29. People of Israel, every year you must set aside 10% of your grain harvest. Also set aside 10% of your wine and olive oil and the firstborn of every cow, sheep, and goat. Take these to the place where the Lord chooses to be worshipped and eat them there. This will teach you to always respect the Lord your God. But suppose you can't carry that 10% of your harvest to the place where the Lord chooses to be worshipped. If you live too far away, or if the Lord gives you a big harvest, then sell this part and take the money there instead. When you and your family arrive, spend the money on food for a big celebration. Buy cattle, sheep, goats, wine, beer, and if there are any other kinds of food that you want, buy those too. And since people of the Levi tribe won't own you any land for growing crops, remember to ask the Levites to celebrate with you. Every third year, instead of using the 10% of your harvest for a big celebration, bring it into town and put it in a community storehouse. The Levites have no land of their own, so you must give them food from the storehouse. You must also give food to the poor who live in your town, including orphans, widows, and foreigners. If they have enough to eat, then the Lord your God will be pleased and make you successful in everything you do. Malachi 3, verse 10. Contemporary English Version. I am the Lord all-powerful, and I challenge you to put me to the test. Bring the entire 10% into the storehouse, so there will be food in my house. Then I will open the windows of heaven and flood you with blessing after blessing. Matthew 6, verses 2 to 4. When you give to the poor, don't blow a loud horn. That's what show-offs do in the meeting places and on the street corners, because they are always looking for praise. I can assure you that they already have their reward. When you give to the poor, don't let anyone know about it. For when your gift will be given in secret, your Father knows what is done in secret, and he will reward you.
Pray with me a moment. Holy One, may the words of my mouth and the meditations of all of our hearts be acceptable to you, O God, our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. You can't serve both God and money. It's a verse that has been preached on and talked about a whole lot in the church. And it's not one that, money isn't a topic that a lot of preachers are comfortable preaching about. And yet, it's part of who we are and how we live. So, we're going to be talking about money today. This is the fourth Sunday in our 5 Sundays of stewardship or giving. The first week was Easter Sunday, and we talked about giving our hearts to God, because the Easter story promises us that when we surrender ourselves to God, amazing things can happen. And so the foundation of any giving is to give our hearts to God. This next week we talked about time, and that the time that we are given each day is ours to use as we will. But the question is, how will we use it? And so we talked about being mindful. Oftentimes we get caught up in the busyness of our lives and we're not thinking about how our time is spent, and that will often lead to regrets. And so there was an invitation that week to look at how you were spending your time and ask yourself, am I spending my time on the things that really actually matter to me? And last week we talked about gifts, about spiritual gifts, and about how those two are things that we offer to God and to each other as part of our Christian walk. And we talked about the bun scoot method of knowing what your spiritual gift was. And that means, what is the thing that when you talk about it or do it, it makes you scoot to the edge of your seat and bounce up and down? What gives you joy? Because Jesus said, I've come that they should have life and have it more abundantly. So joy and peace and delight, these are part of that promise, that intention that Jesus had for how we would live. And so we talked about identifying our gifts and serving in the community and in the church from that place of where we're gifted, so that we find places to participate in the community or in the church or anywhere in our world, and that those are the gifts we often use in our jobs too, that we find those places based on what gives us delight and what we are passionate about. So, with that background, I want to talk about God and money because part of why I think we're so uncomfortable talking about money in church is because it makes us uncomfortable, right? It makes us think about how we're using our money, where we're spending our money, and it makes us wonder about what our relationship is with our money. I don't believe that it's God's intention for us to be uncomfortable about money in our faith journey. Because God has a different economy. God's economy is one where we're called to use our time and our talents and our money to bless the people around us, to provide services to the community, and to be part of a community of faith. God's economy is an economy of abundance. It's an economy where blessings are based not on how much you get, but on how much you give. Where your worth is valued based on the fact that you're a beloved child of God, and not on what you own or what you wear. God's economy is based on people working together to make their lives and the lives of the people around them better. God's economy is what we're talking about when we talk about the kingdom of heaven, and we're invited to participate. Money is just one more way that God's love flows into our lives and out into the world. I'll say that again. Money is just one more way that God's love flows into our lives and out into the world. So it's not about God or money. It's not an either-or thing, it's an and-both thing. But it begins with the stuff we talked about on Easter. Where is your heart? Where is your heart? Because there your treasure will be. When what we are focused on is money, there is never enough. I'm reading a book called The Loony. It's an easy conversation about Christianity and finances. It's a good read. But in the beginning of that book, he did some research on his own, this fella, and because his daughter had come to him and said, "Daddy, are we rich?" And he said, "Well, I don't know if we're rich." And she said, "Well, you're the adult. You're supposed to know this stuff. I'm just supposed to play." Right? So but it got him thinking, are we rich? Right? And he realized that probably they were, among the richest people on the planet. Just because when you look at the whole population, it doesn't take much to be among the richest people on the planet. But he went out and talked to people. He wondered how much money was enough money. So he went to talk to people that made very little money, and they all wanted more money. And then he went and talked to people that made like $20,000 a year and up. And over their conversation, they talked about, well, I'd love to be making more, right? And then he went and talked to some people who were making like above $50,000 a year. And guess what? They also didn't have enough. And then he went and talked to some people who were making like $100,000 a year. And guess what? They weren't making enough. And then he went and talked to some people who were making over $200,000 a year. And guess what? They also weren't making enough. And he discovered that rich is a state of mind. And we all can be rich. And the difference between serving God and serving money is that when you're serving money, when you're focused on money, when you're thinking about money, when you're worried about money all the time, you live in a place of scarcity. Right? There's just never enough. And most everybody is one mishap away from some kind of financial upheaval, right? But when we live in God's economy, we first of all are reminded that we have a good shepherd, and the good shepherd cares for his flock. But we're also taught that God doesn't necessarily provide for us by giving us more. God often provides for us by helping us see what we have with a different light. So that's the question I have for you this Sunday. Is it God or is it money? Have you made an intentional decision about where your abundance comes from? Have you made an intentional decision about your belief about how all of the pieces in your life will come together? Now, this isn't about ignoring the details, because, we have to pay attention to the details. This is not about naive, I'll just, God will provide. God feeds the birds, but he doesn't toss it into their nests, right? They have to go out. So I'm also not talking about a mindless kind of faith. What I'm talking about is a faith where you go to work and you thank God for your job. And you ask God to show you how you can be of service that day. And you sit down and you do your work. And when you get distracted, you pause. And you go back and remind yourself that I'm here, that this is a job I'm doing for God. God, help me do this job well. Help me be of service. It's about sitting down to pay your bills and saying to God, I clearly don't have enough money in my bank account for the bills that are due. Please guide me in making good choices about where this needs to go and how you would have me spend it. Living in God's economy means honoring the fact that your financial house is a mess, if it is. And then asking God to lead you to the people, books, programs, or whatever who can help you get it in order. What if it's God's will for you to be able to pay cash when you go on vacation instead of coming home to a month's worth of credit card bills? What if it's God's will for you to be comfortable with what you have so that you aren't fearful when you're asked to share it? What if it's God's will for us to believe that we are rich even on the days we don't feel rich? And to invite God to show us how to live our faith in terms of our money. See, my friends, it's not the quote is, you can't serve both God and money. It is not, you can't serve God and have money, right? It's that you can't serve God and serve money. You can only serve one. So if our whole focus is on finance, we're looking in the wrong direction. As people of faith, we're invited to an economy that is expansive, that has more answers than questions, that has more help than we're aware of, and that will guide us by the power of the Spirit to make better choices. So, I'll come back to that question. I'm going to leave you with this today. We're going to talk more about money next week, but I'm going to leave you with this. Where is your heart? When it comes to money? Are your finances an area that you're willing to give to God, to seek direction for, and to live differently in relationship to? Because the truth is, we can have so much more than we imagine. We can do so much more than we can imagine. And we can experience what it is to be grounded in a different economy. To have a hope and faith and peace about the money coming into our house and going out of our house. To be able to calmly and mindfully say, where do I want my money to help? Where is your heart? Where is your treasure? Are you willing to give it to God? Amen. So we're going to spend some time in quiet, reflecting on the service and whatever's touched your heart. And then we'll have some special music to draw us back.
dedication to Emma.
Thank you, Beth. It was